Okay guys, so today's video is all about breastfeeding versus formula feeding. And I just want to start this video off by saying mommy shaming won't be tolerated. Yeah, you heard me. Don't do it. Because whether you decide to breastfeed or formula feed, fed is best, sis.
Yes.
It's just best. So in honor of National Breastfeeding Week, I decided to do this video because I'm a breastfeeding mom and I also formula feed from time to time because there's no shame in my game. So I just want to start off by getting all of the obvious scientific facts out of the way. We all know that breastfeeding is technically better for babies' brain development, growth, all of that good stuff. But hey, I was formula fed and I turned out all right. No? Okay. So, the first thing on my list, don't mind me if you see me looking down, but the first pro when it comes to breastfeeding is that, well, it's free. Versus formula feeding, of course, costs money. And I'll be honest with you, that price tag can really rack up. I like to do the already made formula that I get from Walmart, Infamil. I think it comes in like a pack of 6 for $13. And a baby can really run through that pretty quickly, maybe in 2 days, maybe even 3 if you're lucky. I don't know. I always kind of supplement with breastfeeding, so I'm not sure how long it could typically last someone, but $13 and $13, it can really add up. But when we say breastfeeding is free, you really need to think really hard when it comes to that, because while it's technically free, it didn't cost you any physical money. It does cost you a lot of time, energy, and effort. And last time I checked, time was money. Okay? Time is money. And for some women, breastfeeding can be very taxing. It can be even hard. You know, not all babies latch very easily, and sometimes that can take up a lot of time. So you really have to ask yourself, can I afford to breastfeed all around the clock, all hours of the night? Will this keep me up? Will this not allow me to do other things in which I get revenue from? So breastfeeding, yeah, it is free, but just think about the subject of time. Breastfeeding, of course, can be really time consuming and it can really hold you down to virtually one spot. Versus with formula feeding, someone else is able to chip in and help you feed the baby, and eventually baby can hold his or her own bottle, so you can be, washing the dishes or doing laundry or just different things like that. So again, it's all about, do you have the time? So another pro that I personally feel about breastfeeding would have to be bonding. So when baby is really small and first born, it's really hard for them to keep eye contact or focus. Besides, they can't really even see that good.
Legally blind.
So what I've noticed when I'm breastfeeding my son, he tends to give me some really much needed loving eye contact. Now, it could be just because I'm feeding him and he's just looking up, but let me have that one, okay? Let me feel good about myself. But I feel that breastfeeding has allowed me to bond with my son on a level that I feel like formula feeding just doesn't really allow me to. So I guess that's a win for breastfeeding. All right, so when it comes to formula feeding, I can't even lie. Formula feeding is very convenient. And honestly, that's why I occasionally formula feed my son. So when we're on the road, if we're traveling, if we're out and we're about and we're in the car, I don't exactly have the luxury of pulling over to breastfeed him. Sometimes that's when I have to pull out the big guns, aka formula. So formula has allowed us to keep the road trip going. You don't have to worry about if you pumped that day. Did he eat good enough before he left the house? None of that matters. I can just open up a bottle and feed baby right then and right there. So formula feeding is oh so convenient. Another thing. I know this may be kind of weird, but it's just a really big con for me, and that would have to be formula feeding for some reason really makes baby's breath smell. I know it could be really weird. It could just all be in my mind, but whew, I have to put a rag in his mouth afterwards. I don't know. I don't like that smell too much when it comes to formula feeding. Just random. You don't have to agree with me. All right. So another pro about breastfeeding is you never have to worry about running out of it. But for some people, they do. So when it comes to breastfeeding, you have to worry about if your supply is running low. I know. And you think that you just wake up and your breasts just are able to always do what you need it to do, but that's not always the case. Sometimes your milk supply can run low. So you do have to constantly worry about, hey, did I do what I needed to do to make sure my milk supply is adequate for my child? And people go about making sure their milk supply is on the up and up a million different ways. We're not getting into that right now. Okay, and another thing about breastfeeding is that unfortunately it's kind of a con. You have to really watch your diet because things you eat are the things he or she drinks. And sometimes that can really upset baby's stomach. So you gotta just sometimes keep a little food log, make sure you know what you're eating, not eating, add things, take things away until you try to figure out, hey, what may be upsetting baby. But the same thing goes with formula feeding. Not all formula settles well with baby. Now, with my son, he actually did have to go to the NICU just for a few hours after he was born. And so, unfortunately, when he was first born, I was unable to breastfeed him. So, in the NICU, they did give him formula. So, what I decided to do was just to keep the same formula that he had taken in the NICU so that I didn't have to worry about, what formula would or would not hurt his stomach. Now, this isn't the original formula that I wanted to put him on when I was pregnant because I had actually already kind of vested in a certain name brand of formula, but I just felt that it was best to not possibly upset his stomach. So either way, if you're formula feeding or breastfeeding, you definitely have to worry about, will baby's digestive system like it or not? So I think this is a pro, but for many people, it could be a con. But I feel like breastfeeding will make a mama out of you. But listen to why I'm saying this. So a lot of people will definitely say breastfeeding is a con because sometimes you definitely run into situations in which you will have to breastfeed in public. There's just no way around it. You've been out shopping too long. You had to run errands. You got stuck in traffic. There's something that is going to happen in which you're going to have to feed baby in public. And I promise you, when baby starts crying, baby's hungry, you'll put on that cape, mama. You'll put on that cape. Now, whether that cape is a super mama cape where you just whip it out and you breastfeed right then and there, or if that cape just makes sure it covers you up in public, either way, I promise you, you will go into super duper mommy mode. But for some people, being in that awkward situation is just a little too inconvenient. And trust me, I was one of those people. Breastfeeding in public is never my first choice, but if it has to be done, it has to be done. So when it comes to breastfeeding, that is definitely something you have to ask yourself. Is that something I'm willing to do? Or having a cover help me be able to do that? So that's definitely something that I would say isn't necessary a pro or a con. It's just something that you definitely have to consider, definitely have to think about. Okay, when it comes to breastfeeding, weaning your baby off of breastfeeding, I've always been told can be pretty hard. I'm not in that situation just yet, so I personally don't know, but I've talked to a lot of mommies who have 2, 3, 4, 5 year olds who still want to breastfeed, and that can get a little inconvenient in kindergarten. So that is totally up to you. Are you willing to go through the weaning process? Because that can be hard, having to tell your baby no, hearing him or her cry, and just not want to have to go through all of that fussiness. So are you willing and are you able to wean baby off? That is definitely something that you have to think about when it comes to breastfeeding. And also, I've gotten mixed reaction from people when it comes to breastfeeding. A lot of people are like, why you chose to breastfeed? What made you do that? That's weird. You have to get used to people not really agreeing with your decision to breastfeed your child. Weird, huh? Yeah, but it's just the truth. That is just something you have to go through and just realize, hey, this is my baby. This is my choice. So that's really all I had to really say about my biggest pros, cons, differences, whatever you want to call it, about breastfeeding versus formula feeding. But it's not really a versus because, like I said, I do them both. Whatever I need to do to make it through the day, I encourage you as well, mama, to do whatever you got to do because mama life is tough. I didn't choose the mom life, but it chose me. Until next time, don't forget to like and subscribe to my video if you want to see more mommy vlogs like this one. And remember, stay beautiful, beautiful.